I think I didn't do anything wrong, just showed my husband that I could still turn heads, even if it meant handing our world to another man. But the day the legal papers landed on my kitchen table, I realized he had been watching, waiting, and collecting proof while everyone else laughed at him. Before we dive deeper into the story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible stories. The first time Elliot Byrne messaged me on social media, I felt something I hadn't experienced in years: electricity. Not the comfortable warmth of my 7-year marriage to Daniel, but that sharp, intoxicating buzz of being truly seen by someone new. Someone who remembered the woman I used to be before I became just Lila's mom and Daniel's wife. Vesna Kovac, his message read, still breaking hearts in the city, I see. I stared at my phone in our cramped apartment kitchen, listening to Daniel help 7-year-old Lila with her homework in the living room. His patient voice explaining fractions felt suddenly suffocating. When had our conversations become limited to grocery lists and parent-teacher conferences? "It's Moreland now," I typed back, then immediately deleted it. Too defensive, too married. "Guilty as charged," I sent instead, adding a winking emoji. Within an hour, we were deep in conversation about our university days, our dreams, the paths we'd taken. Elliot had become a freelance designer, creative, free, everything Daniel's methodical project management career wasn't. When he suggested coffee to catch up properly, I said yes without hesitation. "Who are you texting?" Daniel asked that evening, settling beside me on the couch with his laptop. "Just work stuff," I replied smoothly, switching to my email app. "The Peterson listing is being difficult." Daniel nodded absently, already absorbed in his spreadsheets. This was exactly what I meant. When had he stopped being curious about my world? My mother Marta called the next morning, her voice bright with conspiracy. "Vesna, darling, you sound different. Happier." "I ran into an old friend from university," I admitted, stirring my coffee. "It's nice to be reminded of who I used to be." "Good. You've been so focused on being the perfect wife and mother. A woman needs a little excitement, a little mystery. Daniel will appreciate you more if he realizes other men still find you interesting." Her words felt like permission. That afternoon, I met Elliot at Café Luna downtown. He looked exactly as I remembered. Dark hair slightly too long, eyes that focused entirely on you when you spoke, that confident smile that suggested he knew secrets about the world. "You haven't changed a bit," he said, standing to kiss my cheek. The contact lingered a moment longer than necessary. "Liar," I laughed, but I'd chosen my outfit carefully. The blue dress that brought out my eyes, the one Daniel hadn't complimented in months. We talked for 3 hours. About art, about dreams deferred, about the weight of responsibility. Elliot listened in a way Daniel had forgotten how to, leaning forward, asking follow-up questions, making me feel like the most fascinating person in the room. "Your husband's a lucky man," he said as we prepared to leave. "Sometimes I wonder if he remembers that," I replied, immediately regretting the disloyalty. But Elliot's hand found mine across the table. His loss would be someone else's gain. That night, Daniel was late coming home. Again. Some crisis at the office, some deadline that took precedence over family dinner. Lila had fallen asleep, waiting for him to read her bedtime story. "How was your day?" he asked, loosening his tie. "Fine," I said, not looking up from my magazine. Let him work for it. Let him ask follow-up questions like Elliot had. But Daniel just nodded and headed for the shower. I picked up my phone and scrolled to Elliot's contact. "Thank you for today. I forgot what it felt like to be interesting." His response came immediately. "You're the most interesting woman I know. Don't let anyone convince you otherwise." I screenshotted the message before I could stop myself, then immediately deleted the screenshot. But the validation remained, warm in my chest like a secret fire. Over the following weeks, Elliot and I developed a rhythm, coffee dates that stretched into lunch, text conversations that carried through the day, social media interactions that felt charged with meaning. I was careful, nothing explicitly romantic, nothing that crossed clear lines. Just friendship, just appreciation. Daniel's mother Hannah noticed first, of course. She had that uncanny ability to sense disruption in her son's life. "You seem distracted lately," she said during Sunday dinner at her suburban house, her sharp eyes fixed on me as I checked my phone. "Just busy with work," I replied, sliding the device into my purse. "Work doesn't usually make people smile like that," Hannah observed. "Daniel, have you noticed Vesna's been getting a lot of messages lately?" Daniel looked up from cutting Lila's chicken. "Vesna's popular. Always has been." His casual dismissal stung more than Hannah's suspicion. This was exactly the problem. He took me completely for granted. That evening, I posted a photo from my latest coffee date with Elliot. Nothing compromising, just two friends laughing over cappuccinos. But I made sure to tag him and add the caption, "Reconnecting with old friends reminds you who you really are." Oh, grateful, our friendship, and our memories. The likes and comments poured in, college friends I hadn't heard from in years, co-workers asking about my handsome friend, even my mother posting heart-eye emojis. The attention felt intoxicating. Daniel saw the post while scrolling through his phone before bed. "Who's this guy?" "Elliot Byrne. I told you about him, university friend I ran into." "You didn't mention you were having regular coffee dates." "I didn't realize I needed to report my social calendar," I said coolly. "He's just a friend, Daniel. Some of us still maintain friendships." The barb hit home. Daniel had let most of his friendships fade since Lila was born, choosing family obligations over social connections. Now his social life consisted mainly of work colleagues and family gatherings. "I'm not saying you can't have friends," he said carefully, "but maybe I could meet him sometime, if he's becoming such a big part of your life." "Maybe," I said, but I was already imagining how awkward that would be. Daniel with his practical questions and earnest conversation, Elliot with his artistic sensibilities and natural charisma. No, some worlds were better kept separate. 2 days later, I found a printed copy of our phone bill on Daniel's desk, with several numbers highlighted in yellow. My heart skipped, but I forced myself to stay calm. I was doing nothing wrong. Friends were allowed to talk. "Snooping through phone bills now?" I asked that evening, waving the paper. Daniel's face flushed. "I was looking for the customer service number. I noticed some high usage and wanted to check our plan." "Elliot and I talk sometimes. Is that a crime?" "Until 2 a.m. We're both night owls. We were discussing his design project." The lie came easily. We had been talking until 2 a.m., but about everything except work, our marriages, our disappointments, the roads not taken. "Vesna, I'm not trying to control you. I feel like we're drifting apart, and now there's this other person who seems to be getting the attention I used to get." His vulnerability should have touched me. Instead, it felt like weakness. "Maybe if you paid attention to me the way you used to, I wouldn't need to look elsewhere for conversation." "Look elsewhere?" Daniel's voice sharpened. "Is that what this is?" "It's friendship, Daniel. Some people still value those." But even as I said it, I was thinking about Elliot's latest message. "Can't stop thinking about our conversation today. You have a way of making everything more interesting." That night, after Daniel fell asleep, I crept to the kitchen and typed back, "You make me remember who I used to be. Thank you for seeing me." I didn't notice Daniel's laptop was still open on the counter, the screen reflecting my phone's glow as I typed. I didn't see him watching from the doorway, his face a mask of quiet determination. The next morning, I found an email in Daniel's sent folder, a message to his brother Adam with the subject line, "Need advice." But when I clicked on it, the message had been deleted. Something cold settled in my stomach, but I pushed it away. Daniel was just being paranoid. I was doing nothing wrong. I was just proving to myself and to him that I was still the kind of woman men wanted to know. I had no idea he was already proving something entirely different. The first time Daniel was publicly embarrassed because of my friendship with Elliot, I told myself it was his own fault for being so insecure. But watching him stand alone at the back of our daughter's school play, while Elliot sat beside Lila and me in the front row, I felt the first crack in my carefully constructed justifications. It started innocently enough. Elliot had mentioned he was between projects and feeling isolated working from home. When Lila's teacher sent the usual note about the spring performance, I impulsively invited him. "It might be boring," I texted, "but if you want to see what elementary school theatre looks like these days." "I'd love to see your world," he replied immediately. "All of it." The response sent a familiar thrill through me. Daniel had stopped seeing my world years ago. He attended school events out of obligation, checking his phone during performances, making polite conversation with other parents before hurrying home to his laptop. I didn't tell Daniel about the invitation. Why should I? It was an open event. Parents brought grandparents, siblings, family friends all the time. If Daniel assumed it would just be us, that was his assumption. The morning of the performance, I took extra care with my appearance. The black dress that hugged in all the right places. The red lipstick Daniel used to say made me look like a movie star. When was the last time he'd noticed what I wore? "You look nice," he said absently, straightening his tie. "Ready to go?" "Actually, I'm meeting someone there. Elliot wanted to see what American elementary school productions are like, cultural curiosity." Daniel's hand stilled on his tie. "You invited him to Lila's play?" "He's interested in experiencing different aspects of American family life for a design project," I said smoothly. The lie felt justified by Daniel's tone. "Is that a problem?" I would have liked some warning. This is a family event. And he's a friend. Friends attend each other's important events." Daniel's face went through several expressions before settling on resignation. "Fine, I'll see you there." But I could tell it wasn't fine. The careful distance he maintained as we got ready, the way he avoided eye contact, the tension in his shoulders, all of it screamed disapproval, which only reinforced my decision. If Daniel wanted to be possessive and small-minded, that was his choice. I arrived at the school early, saving seats in the third row. When Elliot appeared in the doorway, scanning the crowd, I waved him over. Several other mothers noticed. I could see them tracking his movement, whispering to their husbands. Elliot had that effect. Tall, confident, wearing a perfectly fitted jacket that suggested artistic sensibility without trying too hard. "This is charming," he said, settling beside me. "Very Norman Rockwell." "Wait until you see the costumes. Lila's playing a sunflower in the garden scene. I'm sure she'll be the most beautiful sunflower there." His attention felt like sunlight. When was the last time Daniel had expressed genuine interest in Lila's activities beyond logistical necessity? Daniel arrived just as the lights dimmed, scanning the crowd. I saw him spot us, Elliot leaning close to hear something I was whispering, my hand briefly touching his arm as I pointed out Lila on stage. Daniel's face went carefully blank, the expression I'd learned to recognize as his public mask for private pain. He found a seat in the back, alone. "Is that your husband?" Elliot murmured. "Yes. He's always late to these things." "Shouldn't we save him a seat?" I pretended not to hear, focusing on the stage where Lila was singing her solo. She looked so proud, so radiant in her yellow costume. When she spotted me in the audience, her face lit up even brighter. Then she saw Elliot beside me, and her expression grew confused. She looked past us, searching, until she found Daniel in the back. Her smile faltered. "Mommy's friend is here," she whispered to the sunflower beside her, loud enough for the front rows to hear. I felt heat rise in my cheeks, but Elliot just chuckled. Kids say the darndest things. After the performance, parents clustered in the hallway for the reception. Elliot charmed everyone he met, complimenting costumes, asking thoughtful questions about the school, making the kind of conversation that left people feeling noticed. I basked in the reflected attention, aware of the other mothers' envious glances. "Your friend is delightful," said Mrs. Peterson, Lila's teacher. "Is he in the arts?" "Freelance designer," I replied proudly. "He has such an interesting perspective on everything." "How wonderful that Lila has such engaged adults in her life," Mrs. Peterson continued. "Where did your husband end up? I wanted to congratulate him on Lila's performance." I looked around, realizing I'd lost track of Daniel entirely. "He's around somewhere." But he wasn't. I found him outside, helping Lila out of her costume in the car. "Daddy, did you see me sing?" Lila asked, still glowing with performance energy. "You were perfect, sweetheart, the best sunflower in the whole garden." "Mommy's friend Elliot said I was beautiful too. Why didn't you sit with us?" Daniel's eyes met mine over Lila's head. There wasn't room. The lie hung between us. We both knew there had been room. I had chosen not to make it. "We should get going," Daniel said quietly. "It's past your bedtime, Lila." "Can Mommy's friend come for ice cream?" Lila asked innocently. "Not tonight, sweetheart," I said quickly. Even I could see how that would look. Elliot appeared beside us, having finished his rounds of charm in the hallway. "Thank you for including me tonight. Leela, you were absolutely spectacular." Lila beamed. Daniel extended his hand with careful politeness. "Daniel Morland, I don't think we've been properly introduced. Elliot Byrne, Vesna and I go way back, university days. She's told me so much about your family." "Funny," Daniel replied evenly. "She's told me very little about you." The tension crackled between them. I jumped in quickly. "We should really get Lila home. School night and all." "Of course," Elliot said smoothly. "Vesna, I'll text you later. We should plan that coffee date we discussed." Another coffee date, in front of Daniel. I saw his jaw tighten, but he said nothing until we were in the car. "So," he said as we pulled out of the parking lot, "how many coffee dates have there been?" "Daniel, not in front of Lila." "Daddy, why are you upset?" Lila asked from the back seat. "I'm not upset, sweetheart. Just tired." But I could see the lie in the rigid line of his shoulders, the white knuckles on the steering wheel. At home, after Lila was in bed, he tried again. "Vesna, we need to talk about boundaries." "What boundaries?" "He's a friend who attended a public school event." "A friend you have regular coffee dates with. A friend you invite to family events without telling me. A friend who knows more about our daughter than I realized. Maybe if you paid attention to what was happening in your own family, you'd know these things too." It was a low blow, and I knew it. Daniel worked hard to provide for us, often sacrificing his own interests for family stability. But I was tired of being reasonable, tired of managing his feelings about my friendships. "I pay attention," he said quietly. "I pay attention to everything, Vesna, more than you realize." Something in his tone made me look up sharply, but his face was unreadable. That night, I lay awake thinking about the evening, about Lila's confused expression when she saw Elliot beside me instead of Daniel, about the other parents' whispered conversations, about Daniel standing alone in the back of the auditorium while his wife sat with another man. But then I remembered Elliot's text from earlier. "You looked radiant tonight. Lila is lucky to have such a vibrant mother." Vibrant. When was the last time Daniel had called me vibrant? I was still justifying when I fell asleep. I didn't know that Daniel was in the kitchen, forwarding screenshots of my text conversations to his brother Adam. I didn't know he'd started a detailed log of my whereabouts, my mood changes, my lies. I didn't know that while I thought I was proving my desirability, he was quietly proving my betrayal. The evidence was mounting, but I was too intoxicated by attention to notice the trap closing around me. By the time Daniel presented me with a detailed log of my whereabouts and asked for honesty, I had perfected the art of rewriting reality. But when I stormed out calling him controlling in front of our 7-year-old daughter, Watching Lila burst into tears, I felt the ground shift beneath my carefully constructed world. The confrontation came on a Tuesday evening in March. I had spent the afternoon with Elliot at a new gallery downtown. Not a date, I told myself, just two people who appreciated art. Daniel was supposed to be working late, but when I came home flushed with wine and conversation, I found him sitting at our kitchen table with a manila folder. "How was work?" he asked without looking up. "Busy day. The Morrison property is finally showing some interest." "Interesting." Daniel opened the folder. "Because I called your office at 3. They said you'd left for a dentist appointment." My heart skipped, but I kept my voice steady. "I did. Emergency cleaning. I meant to text you. Dr. Martinez's office says you haven't been there since January." The careful documentation in his voice should have warned me. Instead, it made me angry. "Are you checking up on me now? Calling my dentist?" I'm trying to understand why my wife lies to me about where she spends her afternoons. Daniel spread papers across the table, like evidence in a trial. Phone records with highlighted numbers. Credit card statements showing charges at restaurants I'd never mentioned. Screenshots of social media posts geotagged at locations that didn't match my stories. "You've been tracking me?" My voice rose to a pitch that brought Lila to the kitchen doorway, still in her school clothes. "I've been paying attention," Daniel replied quietly. "Something you suggested I do more of." The folder contained weeks of meticulous observation. Coffee shop receipts timestamped during my supposed work meetings. Photos from Elliot's Instagram showing the same locations I'd claimed to be alone. Text message logs showing conversations that lasted hours. "This is insane," I said, my hands shaking as I flipped through the pages. "You're documenting my life like I'm a criminal." "Are you?" Daniel asked. "Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like you're having an affair." "It's not an affair." The words exploded out of me. "We're friends. We talk. We have coffee. We enjoy each other's company. Since when is friendship a crime?" "Since it involves lying to your husband and neglecting your daughter." "Neglecting?" I whirled toward Lila, who was watching us with wide, frightened eyes. "Have I neglected you, baby?" Lila's lower lip trembled. "You're always on your phone now, and you smell different when you come home." The innocent observation hit like a physical blow. Children notice everything. The new perfume I'd started wearing, the extra attention to my appearance, the distracted way I listened to her school stories while texting Elliot. "See?" Daniel's voice was gentle now, focused on Lila. "Come here, sweetheart." But I was spiraling, the careful walls of justification crumbling. "This is exactly what I mean. You're turning her against me, making me the villain because I have one friend who actually listens to me. One friend who you lie about constantly. One friend who gets more of your emotional energy than your family does. Maybe because he doesn't interrogate me. Maybe because he sees me as more than just a wife and mother." The words hung in the air like poison. Lila started crying, not the dramatic tears of a tantrum, but the quiet, broken sobs of a child whose world was fracturing. "Is that what you think?" Daniel asked quietly. "That I only see you as a wife and mother?" But I was too far gone, too defensive to hear the pain in his voice. "I think you take me for granted. I think you assume I'll always be here while you focus on everything else that's more important. Nothing is more important than this family. Then why does it feel like I'm disappearing?" The question came from somewhere deeper than my anger, touching the real wound beneath all the justifications. But instead of creating understanding, it seemed to crystallize something in Daniel's expression. "You're not disappearing, Vesna. You're choosing to leave." "I'm choosing to remember who I am. By lying to me every day. By bringing another man into our daughter's life without discussing it. By posting photos designed to make me look like a fool." His voice never rose, which somehow made it worse. Daniel's quiet control in the face of my hysteria made me look unstable, unreasonable. "You're being paranoid and controlling." I grabbed my purse, desperate to escape the suffocating weight of his evidence. "I can't deal with this right now." "Mummy, don't go!" Lila's voice cracked as I headed for the door. Daddy's being mean to Mommy, I said, immediately regretting the words but unable to stop them. Sometimes grown-ups need space to think. I was out the door before I could see the full impact of my words, but Lila's heartbroken wail followed me into the hallway. In the elevator, my phone buzzed with a text from Elliot. Thinking of you, hope your evening is better than mine. I almost called him, almost ran straight to the comfort of his uncomplicated attention. Instead, I drove aimlessly through the city, my mother's words echoing in my head. A woman needs a little excitement, a little mystery. But as I sat in my car outside a 24-hour diner, watching other people's normal lives through the windows, I couldn't shake the image of Lila's tears or the careful pain in Daniel's voice. When I finally came home at midnight, the apartment was dark. Daniel's pillow was on the couch, and there was a note on the kitchen table. I'm sleeping out here so Lila doesn't have to hear us fight. We'll talk tomorrow when we're both calmer. I found another note tucked under my phone. Adam thinks I should see a lawyer. I don't want to, but I need to know if you want to save this marriage or just win the argument. I crumpled both notes and threw them away. Then I retrieved them from the trash and smoothed them out, reading them again by the light of my phone. In our bedroom, I could hear Lila talking in her sleep. Fragments of worry about Mommy and Daddy, and whether families could break like toys. I opened my laptop and started typing a long email to Elliot, explaining the fight, seeking validation for my position. But halfway through, I stopped. Something about documenting my marriage's problems for another man felt like crossing a line I couldn't uncross. Instead, I deleted the email and stared at the blank screen, wondering when protecting my right to friendship had become more important than protecting my daughter's sense of security. But by morning, the doubt had hardened back into defensive anger. Daniel was the one making this complicated. Daniel was the one turning a friendship into a crisis. Daniel was the one forcing me to choose between being a good wife and being myself. I didn't know he'd already made his choice. While I slept, he'd forwarded my deleted email drafts to Adam, the ones I thought I'd never sent, recovered from our shared laptop's cache. The evidence folder was growing thicker, and my window for honest conversation was rapidly closing. The family dinner where I invited Elliot as a friend was meant to prove that Daniel was overreacting, that everything could be normal and healthy if he would just stop being so suspicious. Instead, it became the evening that convinced everyone, including Elliot, that I had lost all sense of appropriate boundaries. The idea came to me during one of my mother's supportive phone calls. You should invite this Elliot to Sunday dinner, Marta suggested. Let Daniel see that he's just a normal person, just a friend. Sometimes men need to meet the competition to realize there isn't any. Competition. The word sent a secret thrill through me, even as I protested. He's not competition, Mama. He's just someone who appreciates me. Exactly. Daniel needs to remember that other people find you interesting. It will make him value what he has. I convinced myself this was wisdom rather than manipulation. If Daniel could just meet Elliot in a normal family setting, he'd see there was nothing to worry about. We'd all laugh about his paranoia later. I extended the invitation casually, via text. Family dinner Sunday at 6. Nothing fancy, just getting to know the people in my life. Interested? Elliot's response was immediate. I'd love to meet your family properly. Should I bring wine? Just yourself, looking forward to it. I waited until Saturday night to mention it to Daniel, timing the announcement for when he was distracted, helping Lila with a school project. Oh, I invited Elliot for dinner tomorrow. I thought it would be nice for you two to actually talk, instead of just glaring at each other from across rooms. Daniel's hand stilled on Lila's worksheet. You invited him here, to our home? It's just dinner, Daniel. People have friends over for dinner. People usually discuss it with their spouses first. I'm discussing it now. 20 hours before he arrives. That's not discussion, that's notification. I felt the familiar surge of defensive anger. Fine. If you don't want him here, I'll uninvite him. I'll tell him my husband is too insecure to have another man in his house. Lila looked up from her project, sensing tension. Is Mummy's friend coming for dinner? Yes, sweetheart, I said quickly. Won't that be fun? Daniel's face went through several expressions before settling on grim resignation. Fine, but I'm inviting Adam too. If we're having a family dinner, let's make it actually about family. His brother, the lawyer. Something cold settled in my stomach, but I couldn't object without looking unreasonable. Of course, the more the merrier. Sunday afternoon, I threw myself into preparation with manic energy. The good china, fresh flowers, Lila's favorite pasta dish. I changed clothes 3 times, settling on a dress that was elegant but not trying too hard, though I caught myself checking my reflection more than necessary. Adam arrived first, bringing flowers and wearing the carefully neutral expression I'd learned to associate with his legal mind. Vesna, you look lovely. Thank you, it's been too long. But something in his eyes suggested he knew exactly how long it had been and why. Daniel's brother had always been polite but distant with me, and lately, that distance felt more pronounced. Elliot arrived precisely on time, carrying wine, and wearing a smile that could charm anyone. He looked perfect, not overdressed, not underdressed, just effortlessly attractive in the way that made other people feel slightly shabby by comparison. You must be Daniel, he said, extending his hand with confident warmth. I've heard so much about you. Have you? Daniel replied evenly. Vesna's been less forthcoming about you. The first crack in the evening's facade, but Elliot handled it smoothly. Well, we'll have to remedy that tonight. And you must be Adam. Vesna mentioned you're a lawyer. Fascinating field. Within minutes, he was charming Lila with questions about school, complimenting the apartment's decor, making easy conversation about everything except the obvious tension. I felt vindicated. See? This was what Daniel had been afraid of. This perfectly normal, pleasant man. But as the evening progressed, the undercurrents became impossible to ignore. Adam watched everything with sharp attention, occasionally exchanging glances with Daniel. Elliot's charm began to feel performative, too polished for a casual family dinner, and I found myself working too hard to facilitate conversation, to prove that everything was normal. So, Elliot, Adam said over the main course, how long have you and Vesna been reconnecting? A few months now. It's been wonderful getting to know her again, and getting to know this phase of her life. This phase, Daniel's voice was carefully neutral. Well, the wife and mother phase. In university, she was this free spirit, this woman with endless possibilities. It's interesting to see how she's evolved. The words were meant as a compliment, but they landed wrong. I saw Daniel's face tighten, saw Adam make a mental note. I'm still that person, I said quickly. Marriage and motherhood don't erase who you are. Of course not, Elliot agreed, but they do change your priorities, don't they? Your available time, your focus. Some people manage to balance everything, Daniel said quietly. The conversation continued, but it felt like a chess match where I didn't understand the rules. Every seemingly innocent exchange carried hidden meaning. When Elliot complimented the dinner, Adam asked who had done the cooking. When Elliot mentioned our recent gallery visit, Daniel asked about the timing. When Elliot praised my insights about art, Adam wondered aloud about my background in the subject. Lila, sensitive to adult tension, grew quiet and clingy. She kept looking between the men, as if trying to understand why her normally comfortable home felt like a battleground. Daddy, she whispered during dessert, why is everyone being weird? The innocent question shattered the pretense. I saw Elliot glance toward the door, calculating escape routes. I saw Adam pull out his phone and discreetly take a photo of the wine bottle Elliot had brought. Evidence of what? I couldn't imagine. Nobody's being weird, sweetheart, I said, but my voice sounded strained even to me. I should probably get going, Elliot said, checking his watch. Early morning tomorrow. It was barely 8 o'clock. Of course, Daniel replied. Thank you for coming. The politeness was worse than open hostility. As I walked Elliot to the door, he leaned close and whispered, "That was intense. Is everything okay at home?" "Everything's fine," I said automatically, but we both knew it wasn't. After he left, the silence in the apartment was deafening. Lila had retreated to her room, and Adam was helping Daniel clear dishes with the efficiency of someone who wanted to escape quickly. "Well," I said brightly, "that went well." Adam paused in stacking plates. "Vesna, can I ask you something?" "Of course. What exactly are you trying to prove?" The question hit like a slap. "I'm not trying to prove anything. I was trying to help my family get to know my friend." "Your friend who's clearly interested in more than friendship. Your friend who talks about you like you're some exotic creature he's studying. Your friend who made your daughter uncomfortable in her own home." "That's not—" "It is," Daniel said quietly, "and you know it is." Adam pulled out his phone and showed me the photo he'd taken. Not of the wine bottle, of me, leaning toward Elliot during dinner, laughing at something he'd said, my hand resting briefly on his arm. In the photo, I looked like a woman flirting with a man who wasn't her husband. "This is what everyone else sees," Adam said gently. "This is what Lila sees. This is what Daniel has been living with." I stared at the photo, seeing myself as if for the first time. The woman in the image looked guilty, secretive, alive in a way she never looked when interacting with her family. "I think I should stay somewhere else for a while," Daniel said quietly. "Give us both some space to figure out what we want." "Daniel, no." But he was already moving toward the bedroom, already packing a bag with the methodical efficiency he brought to everything. Adam followed, and I caught fragments of their conversation. Documented enough. Custody considerations. Protect yourself. When Daniel emerged with his suitcase, Leela appeared in her doorway. "Where are you going, Daddy?" "Just to Uncle Adam's for a few days, sweetheart. Mommy and I need to talk about some grown-up things." "Is it because of Mommy's friend?" The question hung in the air like an accusation. Daniel knelt to Lila's level, his voice gentle but firm. "It's because sometimes people need space to remember what's important." After they left, I sat in my too-quiet apartment, staring at the remnants of the dinner party that was supposed to fix everything. Instead, it had revealed the full extent of the damage I'd been denying. I picked up my phone to call Elliot, to process what had happened, to seek comfort from the person who understood me. But for the first time in months, I hesitated. Something about the way he'd looked at me tonight, like I was a problem to be solved, rather than a person to be loved, made me question everything I thought I knew about our friendship. I put the phone down and went to check on Lila, who was crying quietly into her pillow. "Is Daddy coming back?" she asked. "Of course he is," I said, but the words felt like lies. I was finally beginning to understand that proving I could make any man want me had cost me the one man who actually had. The morning Daniel served me with legal separation papers, I finally understood that all my careful justifications had been building toward this moment, not a conversation about boundaries or a plea for understanding, but a methodical legal dismantling of our marriage. The man I'd dismissed as passive and inattentive had been quietly constructing an airtight case for why I was an unfit wife and potentially an unfit mother. The papers arrived via courier on a Thursday morning while I was getting Lila ready for school. She was running late, couldn't find her math homework, and I was already stressed when the doorbell rang. "Vesna Morland?" The courier was professionally polite, clipboard ready. "Yes." "Documents requiring signature." I signed without thinking, focused on Lila's growing anxiety about the missing assignment. It wasn't until after I'd dropped her at school and returned home that I actually opened the envelope. "Petition for legal separation," the header read, followed by pages of legal language that slowly translated into the end of my marriage. But it was the attached documentation that made my hands shake, a comprehensive dossier of evidence spanning months, phone records showing hundreds of calls and texts to Elliot, many during family time. credit card statements highlighting charges at restaurants and locations that contradicted my stated whereabouts, screenshots of social media posts and interactions, photos from school events and family gatherings showing my obvious preference for Elliot's attention over Daniel's presence. But worst of all were the witness statements, other parents describing my behavior at school functions, teachers noting Lila's increased anxiety and questions about Mommy's friend. Even my own mother's words, somehow recorded. Vesna needs excitement. Daniel should understand that a woman requires attention from other men to feel valued. The evidence painted a picture of a woman who had systematically prioritized an emotional affair over her family's well-being. Reading it was like seeing myself through a stranger's eyes, and that stranger found me selfish, manipulative, and destructive. My first instinct was to call Daniel, to explain, to negotiate. But when I dialed his number, Adam answered. "Vesna, I was expecting your call. I need to speak to Daniel. Daniel is my client now. All communication goes through me." "Your client?" The word felt surreal. "He's your brother. I'm your sister-in-law." "You were my sister-in-law. Now you're the respondent in a legal separation proceeding." The professional distance in Adam's voice was more devastating than anger would have been. This wasn't family drama anymore. It was a legal matter, with all the cold efficiency that implied. "Adam, please, this is all a misunderstanding. Daniel's overreacting to a friendship. A friendship that involved lying to your spouse, neglecting your child, and publicly humiliating your husband. That's not friendship, Vesna. That's infidelity. I never slept with him. Emotional infidelity is still infidelity, and the pattern of deception is what concerns us most. Us. Daniel had an us now, and I wasn't part of it. I want to see Lila. The temporary custody arrangement allows for supervised visitation twice a week. The details are in the paperwork. Supervised visitation, like I was a danger to my own daughter. After hanging up, I did what I'd been doing for months. I called Elliot. But for the first time since we'd reconnected, his phone went straight to voicemail. I tried texting. Daniel served me with separation papers. Need to talk. The response came hours later. Sorry to hear that. Think we should probably take a break from contact while you sort things out. A break. After months of daily communication, of being told I was fascinating and vibrant and underappreciated, he was suggesting a break the moment my marriage actually ended. I called him directly, and this time he answered. "Elliot, I need you right now. This is all falling apart." "Vesna, I think maybe we got a little carried away. I never meant for your marriage to..." "To what? To end? You spent months telling me I deserved better. I meant you deserved to be appreciated. I didn't mean you should leave your husband." "I didn't leave him. He left me." The conversation continued, but I could hear him withdrawing with every exchange. The man who had made me feel like the most interesting woman in the world suddenly sounded like he was talking to a stranger, a complicated stranger he wanted to avoid. By the end of the call, it was clear that Elliot's interest in me had been contingent on my unavailability. A married woman seeking validation was intriguing. A separated woman seeking actual relationship was a problem. That evening, I picked up Lila for our first supervised visit, supervised by Hannah, Daniel's mother, in her suburban home. The humiliation was complete. "Mommy, why can't I come home?" Lila asked as we sat in Hannah's living room, making awkward conversation under watchful eyes. "Daddy and I are working through some grown-up problems, sweetheart. Is it because of your friend?" Everyone kept asking that question, and I kept deflecting it, but Lila deserved honesty. "Partly," I admitted. "Mommy made some mistakes about how to be a good friend and a good wife at the same time. Are you going to say sorry?" The innocent question pierced through months of justification. When was the last time I'd actually apologized for anything instead of explaining why my behavior was justified? "I'm trying to, baby, but sometimes sorry isn't enough to fix things." Hannah, who had been quietly knitting in the corner, looked up. "It's a start, though." After returning Lila to Daniel's temporary apartment, I drove home through the city I'd once navigated with such confidence. Everything looked different now, smaller, shabbier, less full of possibility. At home, I opened my laptop and began typing a different kind of message. Not to Elliot, not to my mother, not to anyone who would validate my choices. To Daniel. "I read the papers, I see the evidence. I understand now why you felt you had no choice. I'm not asking you to forgive me or take me back. I'm just asking you to believe that I never meant for any of this to hurt Lila. Whatever happens between us, she should know that both her parents love her more than anything." I sent it before I could second-guess myself. The response came the next morning. Not from Daniel, but from Adam. "Daniel appreciates your message. He suggests you focus on demonstrating your commitment to Lila's well-being through actions rather than words. The custody evaluation is scheduled for next month." Custody evaluation. The phrase hit harder than the divorce papers ever had. I wasn't just losing my husband, I was at risk of losing my daughter. That afternoon, I deleted my social media, erased Elliot's number, and hired a lawyer, not to deny anything, but to learn how to rebuild myself as a mother. "The good news," my attorney said, "is that courts prefer joint custody." "And the bad? Your deception and its impact on your child will count against you. You'll need real change." For the first time, I stopped defending myself and started understanding myself. In trying to feel desired, I'd proved Daniel right to protect our daughter from the chaos I'd created. 6 months later, after the custody evaluation, the truth was impossible to escape. The psychologist's report described exactly what I'd been avoiding: my emotional distance, my lies, my obsession with attention over motherhood. Even Lila had noticed. "Mommy doesn't listen anymore," she'd said. That single sentence cut deeper than any evidence Daniel had gathered. In the final agreement, Daniel received primary custody. I got weekends, 1 weeknight, and mandatory therapy. A social media ban. A requirement to notify Daniel before introducing any new partner to Lila. Every condition was fair, and every condition was a reminder of what I had broken. When the judge signed the papers, Daniel didn't gloat. He wasn't vindictive. He was simply a father protecting his daughter, the way I should have. In the hallway, he told me calmly, "We'll learn to co-parent. That's what she needs." It was kinder than I deserved. I moved into a small apartment and began building a life from nothing. Elliot had already moved on. My mother admitted her advice had been unhelpful. None of it mattered. What mattered was Lila, quiet, cautious, watching me as if unsure which version of her mother she would get. The first weekend she stayed with me, she called Daniel's place home. And she was right. I had given that word away. That night, after she fell asleep in the bed I'd let her take, I faced the truth. I hadn't chosen passion over stability. I had chosen validation over responsibility. I had tried to prove I could attract anyone, and in the process, I proved myself unfit for the people who truly loved me. Daniel had been the one steady thing in our daughter's life. I had been the storm. Now, all I could do, the only thing that mattered, was become a mother Lila could trust again. Not for Daniel, not to undo the past, but because she deserved better than the woman I had been. Rebuilding would take years, but for the first time, I was finally focused on the only opinion that mattered, hers.